Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is our Pardot Lightning email building webinar. So we're going to get started right away as we have a lot to cover today and we don't want to waste any time. Just so you know, this session is being recorded, so we'll be following up with resources and links to the articles on the different topics that we'll be discussing on this call. Today, you'll be hearing from myself, Jessica Marsh, and Una Kelly. We're members of the Pardot Success team. Today, we're also joined by the fantastic Tom Ryan. He's the Managing Director of MarCloud Consulting. So you've likely noticed an increased gathering of clouds on this call, but don't worry, today's forecast is sunny with a wave of success coming in from the east. Before we get started and the reason that you're all here, we want to make sure and let you know that all your purchasing decisions should be based off of that which is currently available and none of the future functionality that we'll be discussing on today's call. So with that, today we're going to be covering the prerequisite steps that you need to take in order to use Pardot's new Lightning email builder. We'll also cover additional setup steps. And finally, we're going to show you the new email builder in action. But first up, let's take a look at these. So it's quite likely that most of you will have already done these steps, but if not, please be sure to review these items with your Salesforce admin, a Pardot admin, and your IT team. So the Lightning email builder is available to all Pardot editions, but it does require Salesforce Professional Edition or higher. You also need to have the Salesforce Pardot connector verified. So it doesn't matter which version, either V1 or V2 of the connector, it just needs to be verified. Next, we do need to make sure that you're using the Pardot Lightning app. And one of the most common questions that we get there is which type of permissions this requires. So you need to have the Pardot and CRM user or Sales Cloud user or Service Cloud user permission sets, and also the CRM user or Sales user or Sales Cloud user permission set licenses. So those will grant you the access to leverage and use that Pardot Lightning app. Next, connected users. So this doesn't actually require using Salesforce User Sync. That's something you can certainly consider enabling to help with long-term scalability. But for now, however you've mapped and connected those Pardot and Salesforce users is going to be fine. This moves into connected campaigns then. So we do need to make sure that that is set up. We have a great webinar, which you can find in the accelerator deck. We'll also be sending it as part of the follow-up for you with the guides to set that up if you don't yet have connected campaigns enabled. Next, it brings us into domain setup. So this is definitely something you'll want to work with your IT team in order to ensure that this is set up as needed for your business. Please do keep in mind, though, that when you're setting this up, you select the HTTPS option that is supported by your Salesforce CDN. This ensures that you can then work with the CMS. Also, once you've enabled this, be patient. It can take up to 48 hours to authenticate. Lastly, we want to make sure that we enable the HML. So this, as you can see in the GIF here, is showing. But this is where we'll want to get this from the banner in Pardot at the top of the screen there, and just go ahead and click on Enable. So it's going to be worth noting that right now HML, for dynamic sender is not available. So we do need to use the general sending option. So just keep that in mind when we're using the HML tags. Don't worry though, this is coming down the road and is on the roadmap. So with that, I'll send it over to Una to take us through the necessary setup steps.
Thanks, Jess. So once your domain has been authenticated and all your prerequisites are in place, the next step will be to get your Salesforce CMS or content management system set up and running. Now, a free version of the Salesforce CMS comes with all Salesforce editions, which should be more than enough if you're just storing images for your Pardot emails. There is a paid version if you find yourself needing something a bit more robust, but definitely give the free version a go to get started. It should be more than plenty. Now, first off, you create a CMS workspace. This is where you'll be adding and organizing your content. For your Pardot emails, that is mainly going to be images. If you're looking to add things like white papers or other downloadable links to your email, best practice there is to continue saving it as a content file in your Pardot.org and then use the public link to add it to your email. That way, you'll be able to keep it trackable and reportable so you can see how many people are actually engaging with it. Alternatively, you can always add files like that as well as images using external file sharing tools or Pardot content files for images as well. Next up, you'll be creating a CMS channel, and that's going to help you determine where the content can be used. In this case, it will be with your Pardot emails. Once your channel has been created, the next step is to add your contributors. So those are the people who have access to that channel. If the contributor just needs to be able to access the workspace, give them the content manager role. If the contributor needs to be able to access the workspace, but also do things like add other users or update any other settings like that, then you give them the content admin role. Once you've got your CMS set up, your Salesforce admin is going to go back into the email setup section under Pardot in your Salesforce setup homepage and set this new CMS channel as the chosen channel for your file hosting, which is the screenshots that we can see on our page right here. After that, all that's left is to update your Salesforce users' permission sets and add in any new tabs that you need. Quick note here, if you are already using Salesforce CMS and you have a workspace and channel that meets those prerequisites, you can always use that instead of having to create a new channel from scratch. So whichever works better for you, whether that's a new Pardot specific channel or an existing channel. Now back to your user setup. Right underneath that file hosting tab we can see there's going to be a section called user access. Now the first button is going to be one that says create permission set. Once you click that, Salesforce will automatically create the new use CMS with email templates and email content permission set for you. That's going to appear automatically and it's going to have all the necessary permissions that you need. You don't have to do any adding to it. Your Salesforce admin just needs to assign this permission set to any Salesforce user that needs to be able to access the new builder and send emails using Pardot Lightning. And as a last step, make your users' lives a little bit easier and add the email content and email template tabs to their Pardot Lightning app navigation bar. If the user is also going to be responsible for managing the images you use in your emails, consider adding in one of the CMS workspace or channel tabs here as well. And last little pro tip on the right-hand side of our screen, if your users are having any bother finding those new tabs, make sure that they're made visible to their profile. And also have a think about your folder structure. Having a well-organized folder structure is such a time saver, especially when you start dealing with more and more emails. And if you're working with multiple Pardot business units, your folder structure is how you'll control which templates are available to which business units or if they're available globally. And just before we hand you over to Tom, who can show the builder in action, quick call out for some of the exciting upcoming features and supports planned for the next few Pardot releases. We'll be getting support for both snippets and dynamic content on top of our HTML support, so you can really ante up the personalization there. We'll be getting dynamic sender options like send from assigned user and send from account owner. So you'll be able to take advantage of those user HTML variable tags again that Jens was speaking about earlier. We'll also be getting in litmus rendering and A/B testing, as well as support for other types of email sends beyond just list email. So those will include automated emails and engage emails. And lastly, probably the big one, we'll be getting drag and drop editors for other marketing assets. So the first one planned there is our landing pages. So do keep an eye out. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Tom to take away our demo section.
Perfect. Thank you, Una. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me 2 seconds. Amazing. So I'm just going to run through a couple of slides before we jump into the live demo, just to highlight some bits to keep an eye on as we're going through. The first of which is the actual canvas itself. So what you'll notice throughout the demo is that we have a number of components. On the left-hand side, we can use buttons, images, HTML, rich text, and I'll go through those in the demo. We can play around with the background colors. We can even add a background image URL, and this ties nicely in with the CMS. And I'll make a point of highlighting that during the demo. The tool itself is very easy to flick between desktop version and mobile. So you can actually see how the image will look on a mobile device. So you can account for those different devices, especially when it comes to adding images. It becomes a lot easier to, shape and reshape the size of the particular image. A highly anticipated feature is the buttons. Now, I'm sure all Pardot users are fully aware of how difficult it might be to use buttons in the current editor, but now it's so much easier. You can change the colors of them. You can include merged fields. You can curve the buttons, although just be aware that it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in Outlook with the curved buttons. Just be mindful there. But the tool itself allows you to be fully flexible with buttons. We've got HTML, so if for whatever reason you might have a piece of code from the development team, or even just a piece of an email that you've previously set up and you want to bring it across into the new template. And we can do that via a HTML section, which I'll also show off in the demo. We can link the templates that we build to a related entity type. And by that, what we mean is a Salesforce object. So we can create an email, link it to an opportunity, and this will dictate the type of merge fields that are available on the template. And we can make that certain sections editable and not editable. And then lastly, before we jump into the demo, we've got the reporting, resending, and collaboration tools. So on the left-hand side, you'll see engagement metrics, and this is rolling up all of the statistics of a particular group of email sends. And that's an important note, because you can actually send and resend these emails and see a line item of each one and its performance. I'll go into details on why that's a big deal shortly. And then on the right hand side, we've got chatter, so we can tag people, talk about reports, talk about emails, and it's a really nice touch. So what I'll do now, I'll jump straight into the demo over here. So what we can see here is the Pardot Enlightening app. This is the app, and as you can see at the top, I've customized the tabs at the top. So this is custom to me. The bits we're going to focus on today are the email templates and email content. So let's jump into email templates and start to build our template. And as you can see, we've already got a couple set up, and quite a nice touch is the description tab here. So we can let all other users know this is what the template is, this is what we're using it for, and just to convey a little bit of extra information. So let's start building an email template. So first of all, I'm just going to name my template, and I'm just going to use an example here where I'm going to send an email out about our free review. So at first, I'm going to create the template, add a description so my team knows exactly what I'm doing. And as touched on earlier, we've got the related entity type. Now, for the email builder, for sending list emails, as we know it, we'll want to either use lead, contact, or none. And in this example, I'm going to use none. And I'm not going to keep this to myself. I'm going to let my team use the template. So I'm going to save this into a public email template folder. Now, I can add a subject line just in case any of the team forget to add a subject line for whatever reason. And I can add that here. And I'm not going to use a letterhead, but because I want to use the drag and drop email builder, but you do have that option there if you ever was to use enhanced letterheads. But just be mindful that that isn't going to unlock the drag and drop builder. So perfect. So now I've edited my settings as we're familiar with. I can now get this edit in builder option up here, which I'm going to click, and this is going to take me directly into the canvas. And the first thing I want to highlight and let everyone know is this pre-header part here. So this is the secondary subject line, and it's super easy to populate. So you literally just type it in. You can use merge fields if you like, and this is going to pre-populate the second subject line, which previously was quite difficult in the other editor. Something else I'm going to draw your attention to is the actual styling of the template. So we've got this background color. I don't really like it, so I'm going to go to style, and I'm just going to change that to a nice Marcloud blue. And straight away you can see that background color change. And you've even got the option to use a background image. I highly recommend, if you're going to use an image here, have a fallback color, which will just update this. So if it doesn't load the image, it will load the color. Perfect. So the next step, I'm going to use an image. So I'm just going to drag that across here, but oh wait, I've made a mistake. This is a text area. I can choose to either delete this, or I've got a nice new undo button at the top left. That's really common to make little mistakes when you're building an email. And this is a really nice touch. So I can just go back a step and then continue what I was doing. So now I'm going to actually drag the image across, and I get this nice section here. So what am I going to do? So I can either upload an image, or fortunately for me, my marketing team have already used the Salesforce CMS and they've populated the images for me. So on the right hand side here, I've got the option for files and I've got the option for Salesforce CMS. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this. And quite nicely, they've labeled the folder for me, so I know which folder to use, and I can click in, and I've got all of my assets here. So for this example, I'm just going to use the Marcloud logo. I'm going to save this, and oh my God, it's huge. So first thing I'm going to do here is jump to the Style tab, and I'm going to change the percentage, and I'm going to change this to 80. But it makes sense to probably jump over to the mobile version just to see how it looks, to see if it's too big on mobile. I could probably do with amending that. So I'm just going to lower this to 50%, and just notice how I'm editing the email in the mobile version builder. So this is how it's going to look on mobile. So let's just jump back to desktop. Perfect. So I'm not quite finished on the image yet. So I'm going to add an alt text. And I'm just going to say this is the Marcloud logo. I don't need to use the merge fields at this point, but I'm happy with having that as an alt text image. And then if I wanted to, I could hyperlink this image, and that's now linked. So the next thing I want to do, quite importantly, is to make sure that I've got a manage my preferences link. So I'm going to add a row, and then you'll notice you've got this number of columns section here. So I'm just going to add another column. And straight away, it's the spacing's not right. So I'm just going to click reset column widths and padding. Straight away, there's now 2 sections. So I haven't got too long to build this email, so I'm going to leave this for later. Someone else can edit that, and I will add another section, but just to add the manage my preferences. And we've still got the familiar tool here where we can edit the styling and behavior. Here. So what I can do here is just add the preference center link, and I'm going to use a merge tag to do this. Use the hyperlink, save this, and there we go. So let's add another section because I'm slowly building the email. It's slowly forming. I'm quite happy with how it's going, and I want to make it a little bit versatile. So I'm just going to add a note to the team and say add an introduction here. It would help if I could spell. So insert introduction here. And then what we're going to do is same again. We're going to add a row, but this time I'm not going to use the half and half. I want this one to be 8/12 and a third, 4/12. So similarly, I can add some more text. And then I'm going to add a button. So the button can just sit right next to it. And the link can easily be populated. I can change the call to action. And a really cool feature that I really like is the ability to go to the Style tab, go to button color. I can change the color of the button. So now it's a Marker blue, which is nice. And I can make it curved. So I can change the curvature of the button. Now, I can play around with the padding as well. So if I go back to the position of the button, I can just give it a little bit of room left and right and underneath, just to make sure that it sits nicely. Perfect. So what's left? So I'm going to add a HTML section underneath this, primarily because we've got another email. We like the code. We don't want to spend time recreating it. So we're just going to paste it in here. So we've already got this code, paste it in, and there we go. We've got a HTML section there. And then finally, I'm just going to add a footer at the bottom here, just to sign things off and make it a little bit seamless. And text is a bit big, so I can just use the sizing here to make it a bit smaller. Perfect. So I'm going to save this. And that's my template saved. So I can go back and I'm going to go to email content to then essentially create the list email. So email content is list email for all of the Pardot users who are used to that terminology. So if we head to email content here, I'm going to create a new email. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it our free Pardot review email send, give it a description, and then select template. And this is the template I've just created here. So let's create this template, click save, and it's going to take us to a slightly different canvas. So as you can see here, we've got a couple of things which I'll touch on in a second, but I just want to update that introduction. And notice the padding needs sorting. So I'm just going to add a quick note on Chatter to Jake to say, please sort padding on this email. And I'm going to share this. He'll get a notification. I know now that there's a kind of like a to-do list for this email. It isn't quite complete yet, but I'm just going to add a note to Jake to let him know that he needs to update this email. So if I go into the builder now, there's one nice thing that I'm going to add, and it's been enabled because we've got HTML turned on, and it's this introduction part here. So I'm just going to paste in some conditional logic. So I'm going to say, if we have their first name, we're going to say, what's up, first name. And then if we don't, we're going to say, hello there, sir or madam, which would be nice and formal. But then while I'm here, I might as well sort out the padding. And there we go. There's a little bit of space there now. So let's save this. Let's go back out of the email. And what you might have noticed as a everyday Pardot user is that I haven't touched the text version yet. So what I want to do is go to message content, and I can see the HTML body here. The text body is just going to sit right underneath it. So if I click this button here, I've still got the sync from HTML option, which is perfect. I can save this, and straight away I've got the text body there, but it probably needs a little bit of styling. So I'm really sorry, Jake. Jake, don't forget to tidy the text version. I'm sure he'll know what I mean, even with the typo. There we go. Perfect. So let's take a look down here then. So this is the engagement metric. So whenever you send an email, which we'll touch on in a second, you can then resend the email to a different list. And then all of those metrics are going to roll up and they're going to come here. So we're going to get our overall list email statistics, and they're going to live here, which is really nice. And then similarly, if we jump to the related tab, for every time you send this email, and this will make sense in a second, it's going to give you a breakdown, an itemized breakdown of each of the email sends. It'll give you the open rate, the click rate, and so you've got that logged here, which is really, really helpful. So, as you know, you don't send any personalization without testing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do preview as, and this is they're going to show me what it's going to look like for individual prospects. So I'm going to see how it looks for my colleague Tia. Great, it says, what's up, Tia? But what about for someone who doesn't have a first name? It's going to say, hello there, sir or madam. So that's conditional logic working nicely. The email template or the email content could do with a bit of work, but I'll leave that to Jake because he's really good at tidying up all of that side of things. So if we move on to the final step then, if we go on to the sending tab, we'll skip testing for now because I'm going to leave that to Jake. One last thing I want to really point out is the fact that you can choose the campaign in the sending options. So this is a really big deal because we can send and resend this particular email to different lists and so on. So when I choose the campaign, it gives me that flexibility to associate this email send with this campaign. And this is going to specifically tie in with engagement metrics or engagement history, sorry, which is going to provide a really good insight as to how particular campaigns are performing. And there'll be that association from this email to that campaign. We have our normal options, recipient lists, suppression lists, and this is pretty standard and similar to the normal Pardot experience that you would have noticed beforehand on pardot.com. The only difference here really is the toggles here, which is a little bit nicer than the checkboxes, and it's easier to know, okay, I've clicked the take action when a prospect clicks a link rather than opens this email. Perfect. So I think I managed to get through the all of the parts of the demo. I guess we can go over to questions.